The bell keeper tolling, tolling. Make me feel like my time ain't long. No, the bell keeper, a tolling, child. The bell keeper tolling. It makes me feel like my time ain't long. Well, I got a father gone on. I got a father gone on. Makes me feel like my time ain't long. Father gone on. Father gone on. Make me feel like my time long. The hearse keeper, keep rolling, rolling. The hearse keeper, rolling, rolling, and that make me feel like my time ain't long. Lordy, Lord, well, the hearse keeper, rolling, rolling. The hearse keeper, rolling, keep me feel like my time ain't no long.
Welcome to Plain Talk About Life in the Bible. I believe that John said this is show number 52. And since I still remember how many weeks there are in a year, we've conquered a whole year, plus a couple of more, I think, that Craig had done. So I'm grateful that we're still able to do this after a year. The problems I'm still trying to think through in my life are the same ones. How do you deal with people? How do you deal with things that you own or wish to own in this world? And time. And I get to think about time a lot because I see some interesting quotes on it. And of course, the one I always think about is that time is short and life is shorter. If time is finite, as you and I understand it, then it's precious, isn't it? Just by nature. It doesn't require us to make it so. It just is. It's precious. And the way I utilize my time is sometimes foolish. I treat it as if it's going to last forever, as if I'm going to be able to think in 20 years as well as I do today. Since I don't think as well today as I did 20 years ago, I can see that I'm on a downward spiral. I'm sure you are too. It makes you wonder how well we think when we know something to be very precious and we treat it so poorly. It's so much like it's without bottom to the glass, and we've just got to reorder our thinking. And today's as good a day as any for me. I hope it is for you. Secondly, I deal all the time now with this concept of earthly mindedness. Not only do I want to change the way I think about it, I want to change the way you think about these things. Just like with time, we slip into bad patterns, and we think some things that are important that really aren't important, and we think some things that are unimportant really need to be changed to the point where we think they're utmost importance in our minds. So I want you to bear with me in this thing. And one of the problems I always run into people, and when I'm talking to them, they'll say to me, Bill, I'm just not happy. And I am always thinking and usually saying to them, so what? I don't care if you're happy. I didn't even know that happiness was a goal. We make that statement like it's a universal given. Well, that idea of pursuing happiness, if you just interview the next 12 people who walk through your door and say, is happiness your chief goal? They'll say unanimously, yes, I just want to be happy. Then ask them the next question, are you happy? If you never find a man who's happy, whose goal is always to be happy, then it's either unattainable or something else is wrong with this picture, right? I mean, if you say to a guy, what kind of car do you want to drive? And he says, well, I'd like to drive a Malibu, if they still make Malibus. I don't know if they do. If he says, I want to drive a Malibu, and you say, well, do you drive a Malibu? And he says, well, no. You say, why? He says, well, I'm short on the money. If he tells you he's not short on the money, then is there a dealer nearby? Yes. Is your wife opposed to it? No. Then why don't you own a Malibu? Well, I don't know. Well, happiness is even more difficult to understand like that. If you say to people, what would make you happy? They'll say money, usually, or if I had more respect, or if my wife loved me, or, 1,000 other things, all of which I can assure you have one thing in common. If they found that thing that they think is missing from their equation, they will be unhappy still. They're unhappy now. Give them what they think is missing in their life, and I can assure you they'll be unhappy still. Look at this quote I wrote on the board by a great man, Augustus Toplady, one of my favorite hymn writers, actually, but a very great preacher on top of it. Happiness, thou lovely name, where's thy seat? Oh, tell me where. Learning, pleasure, wealth and fame, all cry out, it is not here. Not the wisdom of the wise can inform me where it lies, nor the grandeur of the great can the bliss I seek create. What's he telling you? What Solomon told you before. Happiness is not only elusive, it's not to be sought. If it's anything in the way that we seek happiness, it's an unfit goal. It is possible, I think, to achieve happiness in some degree on earth as a byproduct of service, a byproduct of giving, a byproduct of self-denial, a byproduct of, some sort of a self-humbling. All of those things, happiness might be found to be a fruit of something in that regard, but it's always an accidental finding, I think. When you set it out to be a goal, you've just set yourself a goal that you can't attain. So you'll settle for something that's a shadow of happiness, pleasure in the moment, perhaps, you see. One of those, we had fun last night kind of things. But don't mistake that. Those are all passing moments. They're deep breaths. They're not abiding lifestyles. And you can't find a person who's truly happy. Now, sometimes people will try to tell you that when you interview them and say, are you happy? Oh, yes, I'm very happy. Well, all I need to really do is to follow them around for 10 minutes. And when she's so happy with Fred, until Fred comes in the room and I ask her a couple of questions about Fred's habits, and then you'll find out she's really not very happy with Fred. She'd like to have a little different version of Fred. Well, that then ruins that idyllic situation, doesn't it? So I'm asking you, is it possible that seeking happiness is foolishness? And the answer, of course, is absolutely. I read a quote one time by a guy named Eric Hoffer, I think was his name, and he said, the chief source of unhappiness is the pursuit of happiness. Say it again. The chief source of unhappiness, or at least one of the chief sources of unhappiness, is the pursuit of happiness. And I think he's right. Now, let me go one step further. If you're an unbeliever, well, happiness, as elusive as I just claimed it was, is probably the only thing that's fit for you as a goal in this sense. You won't attain it, but at least it's what you are. It's something of this earth, and it's comprised in your mind of things of this earth and emotions of this earth. Now, if you're a Christian, remember the Psalm 16:11. In your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. See, we have a different system if we're Christians. When I was a non-Christian, I was in what the Bible determines to be darkness. Now it says that God called me out of darkness into His marvelous light. Now, He does that sovereignly, graciously, mercifully, but He does it. He opens your eyes, He opens your ears, He changes your heart. That's the story of the Bible. Now, there's nothing in that for you to glory in if you're a Christian. There's everything to glory in Christ for in that statement. But I'm saying to you, your happiness, your joy is supposed to be found in God's presence. Nothing else will do for you. When you became a Christian, you were discharged from this world. Think about that. God called you out of the darkness into the light. He discharged you from the darkness. This is not your home. This is not your world. This is not your source of joy. Your citizenship, Philippians 3:20, is in heaven. Your citizenship is in heaven. You weren't called to be a Christian who keeps this world as his home. You can't do it. It's impractical, it's impossible, and it's imbecilic. We need to focus ourselves on the fact that, if you remember in his letter to the Corinthians, Paul says, old things have passed away. All things have become new. Why? You're a new creature, it says. Right? You were born again. You're a new creature. Now, we must be born again because the old creature is earthly. He's earthy, and he's hell-bound. He's a pilgrim on his way to hell. That's all an unbeliever is. Don't mistake him for something else. He's not going to make his kingdom here. He's got a home, it's hell, and he's headed there. He's somewhere on that path, and he'll shortly arrive there unless God picks him up, turns him around, gives him a new heart, and heads him in a different direction. There's only two possibilities. So if you're a Christian, and somehow you're looking longingly over your shoulder at this world, or you somehow have made the mistake of thinking you still are of this world, pardon me, you haven't been doing your Bible study. So I want to shake that out of you. If you were here right now, I'd pick you up by the lapels and I'd shake you so hard that all the money in your pockets would come flying out and you'd be empty-handed and you'd be empty-hearted to match your empty-headedness about this world and your unreasonable belonging to it if you're a Christian. If you profess to be a Christian and your heart is really in this world, then I know what you are. You are a mere professor who doesn't have the good sense to see himself as a mere professor. You're self-deceived, and you're going to be self-destructive. Okay? We call it plain talk because it's supposed to be plain, see? That's how it's supposed to be. So, if that isn't plain enough, call me, and I'll try to go through it again and make it so that you don't have any wiggle room at all. If you have your heart in this world, I don't care if you profess to love Christ, you're still in darkness. Many people do that. Remember, Christ said, on that day, many people will say to me, Lord, Lord, and I'll say, I never knew you. They will have done miracles in His name. They will have preached in His name, and they're still on their road to hell. Now, that's not me saying that. That's Christ Himself, God Himself in Matthew 7. Okay? So, think about it. If you're undecided, really, how you feel about this, then you are earthly minded. You need to be born again, and you need to get your ears open today, because today may be the day that God takes you out of darkness and puts you into His wonderful light. Thanks. You know, the other day, I was going through with some other people the things that Jesus said, really, from the cross. And each of them is moving, some of them more well-known than others, like, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. When He speaks to John about his mother, his conversation with the thieves on the cross,